Chapter 3, Egypt and Exodus, Exodus, Leviticus. The birth of a nation and the law of holiness. The stage darkens as we enter the Egypt and Exodus epoch. The 70 souls who entered Egypt at Joseph's invitation grew into an enslaved nation of millions. The book of Exodus opens with these ominous words, "Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful, they multiplied greatly, increased in numbers and became so numerous that the land was filled with them." Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. "Look," he said to his people, "the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them or they will become even more numerous and, if war breaks out, will join our enemies, fight against us and leave the country." Thus began a period of brutal oppression. The Egyptians enslaved the Israelites, setting taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. Yet the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. When this oppression failed to curb their growth, Pharaoh commanded the Hebrew midwives to kill all newborn boys. But the midwives feared God and let the boys live. Finally, Pharaoh gave this cruel order to all his people: "Every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live." It was into this context of darkness and despair that a baby was born to a Levite couple. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The baby's sister watched as Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then the baby's sister approached Pharaoh's daughter and asked, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." This miraculous preservation of Moses' life was the first key event in this epoch. Raised in Pharaoh's household, Moses received the best education Egypt could offer. Yet he never forgot his Hebrew roots. When he was grown, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man replied, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian. For 40 years, Moses lived in Midian as a shepherd, a dramatic fall from his position as a prince of Egypt. Yet it was in this wilderness that God prepared him for his ultimate calling. The pivotal moment came at Horeb, the mountain of God. There Moses saw a bush that was on fire but did not burn up. When he went to investigate, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses! Moses!" And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. God revealed his plan to Moses, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, Go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people the Israelites out of Egypt." Moses, however, was reluctant. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" he asked. God assured him, "I will be with you." Moses then asked what he should say if the Israelites asked for God's name. God revealed himself with the profound declaration, "I am who I am." This is what you are to say to the Israelites, "I am has sent me to you." This name, Yahweh, signified God's eternal, self-existent nature and his faithfulness to his covenant promises. Despite God's assurances, Moses continued to object, citing his lack of eloquence. Finally, God became angry with Moses but provided his brother Aaron as a spokesperson. Moses returned to Egypt, confronted Pharaoh with the demand, "Let my people go," and thus began the dramatic struggle between God and Pharaoh. Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused to let the Israelites go. In response, God sent a series of 10 plagues upon Egypt, each more severe than the last. These plagues were not random acts of destruction but calculated theological judgments against the gods of Egypt, proving Yahweh's supreme power over all other deities. The Nile turned to blood, challenging Hapi, the god of the Nile. Frogs overran the land, mocking Heket, the frog-headed goddess of fertility. Dust became gnats, and flies swarmed, showing God's power over Jeb, the god of the earth. Livestock died, demonstrating God's superiority over Atha, the goddess of love and protection. Boils broke out on people and animals, showing God's power over Isis, the goddess of medicine and peace. Hail destroyed crops, challenging Nut, the sky goddess. Locusts devoured what remained, proving God's power over Seth, the protector of crops. Darkness covered the land for 3 days, demonstrating God's power over Ra, the sun god. Each time, Pharaoh promised to let the Israelites go if Moses would end the plague, but once the plague was removed, Pharaoh hardened his heart again. This cycle continued until the final and most devastating plague, the death of the firstborn. Before this plague, God instituted the Passover, the 9th key event in salvation history. He instructed each Israelite household to take a year-old male lamb without defect, slaughter it at twilight, and take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the doorframes of their houses. They were to roast the meat and eat it with bitter herbs and unleavened bread, with their cloak tucked into their belt, their sandals on their feet, and their staff in their hand, ready to leave at a moment's notice. On that terrible night, the Lord went through Egypt and struck down every firstborn, both human and animal. But when he saw the blood on the doorframes, he passed over those households. The blood of the sacrificed lamb ensured that the angel of death passed over the Hebrew homes. This event prefigures the ultimate sacrifice of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, whose blood would save all who trust in him from spiritual death. The Passover paved the way for the mighty Exodus, the physical departure of the people. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron during the night and said, "Up. Leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds, as you have said, and go. And also bless me." The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for they thought, "We will all die." So the Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and they gave them what they asked for, thus plundering the Egyptians. This deliverance was secured with the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea. As the Israelites left Egypt, Pharaoh changed his mind once again and pursued them with his army. When the Israelites saw the Egyptian army marching toward them, they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." Moses did as the Lord commanded, and during the night, the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariot so that they had difficulty driving. The Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses his servant. The nation then journeyed to Mount Sinai, where God spoke directly to them. This epoch's primary covenant, the Mosaic Covenant, was established, Exodus 19 verses 5 to 6. Unlike the unconditional promise to Abraham, this was a conditional covenant. "Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Israel was to be a priestly kingdom and a holy nation if they strictly obeyed the law. The fundamental terms of this covenant were the 10 Commandments, Exodus 20, which God spoke directly to the people from Mount Sinai. The commandments were: 1. You shall have no other gods before me. 2. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. 3. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. 4. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 5. Honor your father and your mother. 6. You shall not murder. 7. You shall not commit adultery. 8. You shall not steal. 9. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. 10. You shall not covet. The people were terrified by the thunder and lightning, the trumpet sound, and the smoking mountain, and they said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. God then gave Moses hundreds of additional statutes and ordinances that governed every aspect of Israel's life, moral, civil, and liturgical. These laws were designed to set Israel apart as God's holy people and to point them to their need for a savior, as no one could perfectly keep all the commandments. The supplemental book of Leviticus is crucial here. It provides the detailed manual for holiness, describing the complex sacrificial system, the very mechanism God created to deal with the people's inevitable failures under the conditional covenant. Leviticus outlines 5 main types of offerings. 1. The burnt offering, symbolizing complete dedication to God. 2. The grain offering, representing the fruit of one's labor given to God. 3. The peace offering, expressing thanksgiving and fellowship with God. 4. The sin offering, providing atonement for unintentional sins. 5. The guilt offering, making restitution for specific sins. These sacrifices were not ends in themselves but pointed forward to the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ, who would fulfill all that they symbolized. Leviticus also establishes the priesthood, with Aaron and his sons serving as mediators between God and the people, and outlines laws concerning purity and impurity, teaching the people about God's holiness and their need for cleansing. The people's obedience was visible in their construction of the Tabernacle, the portable sanctuary where God's presence would dwell among his people. The Tabernacle was a magnificent structure, with the holy place containing the table of showbread, the lampstand, and the altar of incense, and the most holy place containing the Ark of the Covenant, where God's presence would dwell above the mercy seat. the detailed instructions for the tabernacle's construction, its furnishings, and the priest's garments all pointed to spiritual truths about God's holiness, humanity's need for mediation, and the way of approach to God. When the tabernacle was completed and set up on the first day of the first month of the second year, the cloud of the Lord covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, the Israelites set out; wherever the cloud settled, the Israelites encamped. For the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. Thus ends the chapter of Egypt and Exodus, a story of oppression and deliverance, of slavery and freedom, of judgment and redemption. God had demonstrated his power over the greatest empire of the day, had established his covenant with Israel, and had provided a means for them to live in relationship with him despite their sinfulness. The nation had been born, and the law had been given, setting the stage for the next phase of their journey to the Promised Land.